It all began when I couldn't resist her temptation. My life turned upside down the moment my wife's younger sister walked into our home and started making her plans. Did I do the right thing by succumbing to her charms, or will it inevitably destroy my family? My wife, Emma, has always been utterly faithful to me, and I to her. Our family seemed exemplary, at least, that's what I thought. We lived in a cozy house on the outskirts of town, where everyone knew each other and nodded pleasantly when they met. But when her younger sister, Alice, showed up at our door, I had no idea that this visit would change everything.
Thank you for watching my channel. I create videos for your enjoyment. Please subscribe if you want to support my efforts, it's very important to me. I apologize in advance for any mistakes, dubbing is done by neural network. Please point out mistakes in the comments so I can correct them.
Alice came to us after a divorce. She had no place to live, and Emma offered for her to stay with us. I had no objections. Alice and I had always gotten along well. She was 10 years younger than Emma, and her eyes sparkled with that youthful energy that had long faded in our marriage. I enjoyed her company, but I never thought of her as a woman. At first, everything was fine. Alice helped around the house, cooked dinners, and told us about her plans for the future. But gradually, I began to notice oddities. Her glances became longer, and her touches more frequent and casual. At first, I thought it was just a sign of her friendliness, but soon it became clear that her intentions were beyond mere family relations. Every morning, while Emma was still asleep, Alice would appear in the kitchen in a thin nightgown. Her movements were light and smooth, like a cat. She came too close, her hand occasionally brushing against mine. "Good morning," she would say, with a warm note in her voice that sent a shiver down my spine. She often arranged chance meetings in the house when we were alone. One evening, when Emma had gone out to meet friends, Alice decided to throw a small party. She wore a tight dress that accentuated her slim figure and brought a bottle of wine. We sat in the kitchen, talking and laughing. I felt the tension between us growing. Her eyes were burning, she leaned in closer, and her hand touched mine more often. "Do you like spending time with me?" she suddenly asked, tilting her head. There was something enticing in her voice that made me nervous. "Of course, you're good company," I replied, trying to stay calm. But she didn't back off. "And what if I say I want more?" Her voice grew quieter, almost a whisper. My heart raced. I didn't know what to say, so I just remained silent. The next day, she decided to surprise me. I came home earlier than usual and heard the sound of water coming from the bathroom. As I got closer, I saw through the slightly open door that Alice was taking a shower. She hadn't closed the door, almost deliberately. Water was running down her body, and I couldn't look away. "Oh, hi," she said, noticing me. Her voice was soft and provocative. "Do you want to join?" she asked, and I felt my face flush. Later, when we were alone, she approached me and quietly asked, "Have you ever thought about me?" Her eyes sparkled, and I knew she was waiting for my answer. I tried to change the subject, but she didn't back down. "Tell me the truth," she insisted, her voice low and seductive. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, she moved closer. I felt her warmth beside me. She rested her head on my shoulder, her hair brushing my neck, causing a slight tingling. "I like you," she whispered in my ear, and I felt my resolve begin to melt. She found more and more ways to touch me. Her hand would accidentally brush against mine as we passed each other in the hallway, or she would gently touch my face, supposedly brushing away a stray lock of hair. These touches were so innocent, yet unbearably sweet. I felt her presence even when she wasn't around. The night that changed everything. The day after one of our secret meetings, Alice suggested we go grocery shopping together. It seemed innocent, but as soon as we were in the car, she suddenly suggested we stop at a place. We pulled over to the side of the road, where an old abandoned house stood, surrounded by a dense forest. "Here we can be alone, no one will find us," she whispered, unsettling me with her unexpected boldness. At first, I tried to dissuade her, but her persistence and seductive gaze made me agree. We entered the house, and as soon as the door closed behind us, Alice pulled me to her, her lips eagerly pressed against mine. At that moment, I realized there was no turning back. We spent hours together, hidden from everyone in that house. At first, it was rare meetings, but soon they became regular. We looked for excuses to escape, and every time we were alone, we plunged into a world of passion. I knew I was losing control, but I couldn't stop. Alice knew how to make me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. Soon, I started noticing that Alice smelled of a men's cologne that wasn't mine. "Are you seeing someone?" I asked one day when she came home later than usual. She just laughed and smiled mysteriously. I felt jealousy slowly eating away at me from within. A few weeks into our affair, Alice suddenly confessed that she had been seeing a wealthy man who was ready to marry her. "But I love you," she added, and this confession made me shudder. I couldn't believe my ears. Why hadn't she told me this before? Why did she continue to come to me? One evening, when Emma was in the shower, the doorbell rang. A tall man with a cold expression stood at the door. "I'm David, and I'm looking for Alice," he said, looking me up and down. My heart froze. "Alice doesn't live here," I replied, trying to hide my fear. "Funny, she told me she was staying with her sister," he continued, staring into my eyes. I realized that our secrets were starting to come to light. After the meeting with David, I was in a panic. I called Alice and demanded an explanation. "Why did you drag me into this?" I shouted into the phone. She replied coldly and indifferently, "Did you think I belonged only to you? David is my future, and you're just a fling." These words hurt me deeply, but I understood that it was too late to change anything. That night, as I tried to calm down, Emma approached me with questions. "What's going on with you?" she asked, her voice full of worry. I felt the walls around me starting to crumble. I couldn't keep lying, but I also didn't know how to tell the truth. "Nothing, I'm just tired," I mumbled, avoiding her gaze. But I knew it was just a temporary refuge. Soon, Alice came to me with news. "I'm leaving," she said coldly. "David has offered me to move in with him, and I agreed." These words cut me deeply. I didn't know what to say. At that moment, I realized that all our meetings, all those moments of passion that seemed so significant, were just a game for her. "And what now?" I asked, trying to hold back my emotions. Alice shrugged and turned away, avoiding my gaze. "Now I'll be with him. It's the best future for me." "And you," she paused, as if choosing words that might comfort me, but her eyes showed indifference. "Just forget about me, it will be easier." "Forget." I felt anger and despair boiling inside me. "What about everything that happened between us? Doesn't it mean anything?" "It did," she replied quietly. "But it was all temporary. You knew that from the beginning." Her words were like a knife to the heart, but I understood that she was right. I had boxed myself into this corner. After Alice left, I couldn't recover for a long time. The house, which had once seemed so cozy, now felt foreign to me. Every room, every corner reminded me of her, of those forbidden pleasures we had shared. But I knew I had to move on and tried to return to a normal life. However, things soon got even worse. Emma started noticing my strange behavior, my frequent mood swings. She asked questions that I couldn't answer. And then the worst thing happened. She found evidence of our meetings. One evening when I came home, she stood in the bedroom doorway, holding a phone. "What is this?" Her voice trembled with anger and pain. The phone screen showed the photos and messages we had exchanged. I froze, realizing that there was no more point in lying. "This isn't what you think," I tried to justify myself, but Emma was no longer listening. Her eyes filled with tears, and she threw the phone aside. "How could you?" Her scream tore through the silence of the house. "I trusted you and you with my sister?" I saw her heart breaking into pieces and couldn't do anything to fix the situation. After this conversation, I tried to find a way to fix everything. I wanted to regain her trust, wanted to explain myself, but I knew words were powerless. One night, while Emma sat in the living room, I approached her. "I made a terrible mistake," I began, and she looked at me with such disdain that I could barely continue. "But I don't want to lose you. Let's try to make things right, try to start over." She remained silent for a long time, then finally said, "Do you think it's possible? Do you think I can forgive you after all this?" Her eyes were full of pain and doubt, and I knew she was right. Perhaps it was too late to change anything. A few days later, Emma said she needed time to think. She packed her things and went to stay with her parents, leaving me alone in our house. I felt the world around me collapsing, but there was nothing I could do. I knew she was right and that I deserved this solitude. The house, once filled with laughter and love, was now cold and empty. I remained alone, and this emptiness weighed heavily on me. I tried to work, tried to distract myself, but thoughts of what I had lost wouldn't leave me. Meetings with Alice, her betrayal, Emma's departure, all of it became an unbearable burden I carried with me every day. One day, when I was deep in depression, Alice unexpectedly came to see me. She looked different, her face was serious, and her eyes were full of regret. "I shouldn't have come," she said, lowering her gaze. "But I wanted to talk to you to close all the questions." I nodded, feeling that this conversation would be the last. She told me that her relationship with David hadn't worked out, and that she was alone again. "I understand that we made many mistakes," she said, trying not to look me in the eye. "But I want you to know, I never wanted to ruin your life." "That's no longer important," I replied, feeling exhaustion enveloping my entire being. "We both made our choices, and now we have to live with the consequences." Alice nodded and, without saying another word, left the house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Emma did not return. She filed for divorce, and I understood that it was the end. I had lost everything: love, trust, family. I was left alone, destroyed by my own actions. The life that once seemed perfect was now in ruins, and no one but me was to blame. Now I sit in our bedroom, where I once felt so confident and calm, and wonder, what do I do next? Emma still doesn't know all the details of what happened between me and Alice, but I know it no longer matters. It's all over. All that remains are regrets and the realization that I destroyed my life with my own hands. Months have passed, and I've tried to rebuild my life. Emma hasn't returned, but she has found the strength to move on. I remain here, in this house full of ghosts of the past. Sometimes I think that maybe all of this was a lesson, painful, harsh, but necessary. Now I must learn to live with what I've done and seek a path to forgiveness that I might never deserve.